LoGrasso, welcome to WECAN. Your story is about being a multi-passionate creative known for empowering others to express themselves, to be authentic, to be creative. You're a singer, a podcaster, a creative coach, and a keynote speaker. A creative fairy godmother, as you call yourself, a Webby Award-winning host, named one of the top 10 most inspiring women. You made a real name for yourself in media and entertainment, Lauren. And you helped produce notable podcasts such as We Can Do Hard Things with Glennon Doyle, Brené Brown's Unlocking Us, Big Little Feelings, and more. And you have your own podcast called Your Inner Creative with Lauren LoGrasso. You're also VP of Programming and Development at Audacity. Lauren, thank you for being here. Thank you for leading by example at WECAN. What do you feel matters to you most, and how would you like to matter with all of the things that you do?
What matters to me most is people. And I think people are everything more so than even what we're experiencing because people make the experience. And so it's people number one. That's the broad thing. But then making sure that people know that they matter and that every human being is a miracle. The chance that any of us would be born is 1 in 400 trillion with a T.
Yeah.
And so we need to start treating ourselves and each other as walking miracles because that's what we are. And that's the thesis behind Unleash Your Inner Creative is helping everybody remember the spark of their humanity and that we were all born creative. And so it all originates with people and love for people, and everything else feeds into that.
Amazing. Lauren, so talk to us about that a bit, about being a creative fairy godmother. What does that mean, and how can we all turn up more authentic and creative, which is a real wave in our zeitgeist at the moment?
Yeah. Well, it's so important right now with the rise of AI because the one thing AI can't do is be creative. It can replicate
Mm,
creativity, but it cannot be creative.
yeah.
And so, embracing our own human creativity, our own imperfections, it's going to make us very different from the computers that we're competing against. And part of why I started my podcast was I heard a statistic that in 50 years, 85% of all jobs will require creativity. So
Wow.
it's not just this like fluffy life skill.
Mm,
It's actually a really tangible, important skill and part of our humanity, again, to hone in order to be financially viable now and in the future. So I think the first step to unleashing your creativity is just remembering that you are creative. I think a lot of people
mm,
who aren't traditional artists
yeah.
walk around thinking they're not creative. But the truth is, we all use creativity every single day. So if you've ever thought of a recipe in your head and then made it exist out in the world by cooking it, you have completed a creative act. There's also a study by NASA that was done in the 1960s. It was a longitudinal study. And they took a group of 4 and 5 year olds and gave them a test for creative potential. And of those children, 98% scored not only creative, but creative genius.
Wow.
But by the time they were giving the same test to adults, so the average age for those adults was 31, those numbers had flipped. So it went to 2% creative genius. So my theory is that we don't need to like conjure up or invent creativity. It's simply something we need to remember. So the first step to unleashing is just remembering and owning the fact that you were born a creative genius. And to get back to it, all you have to do is unpeel the layers that cover that up. And so, what I do as a creative fairy godmother, the first step is really in healing because a lot of times the reason we're not attached to our creativity is because we've had it knocked out of us by life. So, I help people uncover what that creative spark was when they were little or even as a young adult and cultivate that joy, heal whatever creative wounds they might have. And then we go ahead and take their dream and help them make it out in the world with very tactical steps.
Lauren, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking we got this education system all wrong, right? Because if we go from 98% creative genius to 2%, that's life, but that's our education system beating that out of us.
Yeah. I mean, great job pointing that out because that's literally what the founders of the study said. So
Mm,
basically, in our schooling system in the US, and I don't know what it's like overseas, but I'm sure there's a lot of similarities.
yeah,
Um, our schooling system teaches us divergent or convergent thinking, which is logic, like A plus
yeah,
B equals C.
yeah,
You know, it's a way overemphasis in that kind of thinking,
yeah.
and they totally de-emphasize divergent or generative thinking, which
Mm,
is daydreaming, imagining, which all leads to innovation, right? Which is what companies are always saying they want. But that way of thinking is called out as silly or frivolous as we get older and older.
mm.
So, a big part of unleashing your creativity is literally letting your mind wander and daydream. And the other thing that they found was that we're taught that there's a consequence to being wrong. So, if you ever, when you were a kid, raised your hand in class and you were so excited to give an answer and you had this great idea, and then the teacher told you were wrong or humiliated you in front of the class or your classmates laughed at you. This is something I call a creative wound. It's a time when you shared your most creative self. You were so excited and then you were shut down and you started shrinking. So it's a mixture between basically like the implications of negativity bias of saying no to someone instead of being like, that's an interesting idea. How can we build on that before saying no, at least? And totally shunning this daydreaming generative thinking.
Lauren, I love everything you say, and actually, it fits in so well into this week because I've interviewed a 16-year-old girl from New Jersey yesterday who was talking all about us taking risks of failing,
Mm,
of staying curious so that we don't lose out on many opportunities. Because, especially as girls and women, we try and do everything so perfectly, right? And that
yes.
stifles our creativity because creativity is all about messing up and right and continuing anyways. So I wonder, after thinking about this for quite a long time, do you have any main learnings or guidelines of, of course, to realize that we can be creative, but what are the next steps? Is it for people to literally just think, how can I be creative today? So if a banker is listening and the whole life is sort of, geared towards logic and math and things adding up, how does one go from there to finding outlets of creativity?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's really endless ways in which you can do it, which is so exciting. I have a method that I talk about in my speeches. And just to give our listeners an example, like the last speech I gave was for a group of insurance professionals, and they hired me because they too are worried about being replaced by AI and like know that they need creativity to create new policies, to better interact with their clients, to use storytelling to sell. So there's always opportunities and necessity for creativity, no matter the field. All fields require creativity, whether or not we think of it that way. So just level setting with that. But in my speech, I have a creator method, which is an acronym. And I didn't want to do this acronym thing at first because, like, I hate anything that is like normal or corny. But there's a reason people use acronyms, and it's because it works.
It's helpful.
So, my first letter in it is C, calm the noise. And so
Mm,
that just means like we live in such a frenetic world. It is so loud. There's so many things pulling our attention. It's really harder than ever to hear your own voice. So, a great example of calming the noise is just starting to realize how much of other people's creativity am I taking in versus how much time am I spending daydreaming, creating, even again, if it's like creating a new recipe, thinking of a new way to parent your child, like how much time are you actually spending watching other people's creativity, reading, listening, and how much time are you spending on your own thoughts
mm,
and hearing your own voice? So that's calm the noise. R is remember the inner child. So this is where I ask people to remember their joy, their creative joy as a child, the first time they felt their creative inciting incident and a spark in their heart. And then also to look back on a creative wound. So a time when you were told to get smaller, get quiet, not share yourself with the world. So that's remember the inner child. E, which is something you were speaking to with that wonderful 16-year-old, which good for her for already knowing that lesson. But E is embrace the art of being bad at something. And I actually put a Substack out about this today. I would love it if any of your listeners wanted to subscribe to it. It's going to be lots of stuff like what we're talking about. But it's all about being in beginner's mindset, realizing that when you start something new, the natural way of things is actually not being good at first. And if you can push past that pain of being bad in the beginning, that's how you start the path to mastery. So it's mirroring the same way that people go from babies, go from crawling to walking to running and fall a lot along the way. That's the same way it should be when you're starting to hone your creativity. Then A is assemble your creative dream team. So your community is a great example of that. People coming together, sharing their dreams, sharing their insights, and lifting each other up. We can't get anywhere alone, and it's really hard to unleash our creativity in a silo. So that's E. CREA. That's T. So T, try microdosing courage. So it might be scary to go from like feeling like, oh, I want to sing, or, oh, I want to try to be more creative in my banking job, to then just doing it the next day. So you do it in teeny tiny baby steps. So you don't go from like feeling like you want to record an album to then doing it the next day. You tell a friend first, then maybe you release a song online. So you stair step your way up to it. So it doesn't feel appalling when you go to do this thing. And then by the time you get to the big thing, you've done so many small acts of courage that it just feels easy. And then CREATO, opt for holistic success. So this is really when you, instead of going out and like trying to get your worth out in the world, like saying, when I get this, I'll finally be happy, realizing happiness comes from inside, and you can have dreams and goals, but at the end of the day, it's just what takes you on the journey. Who you are is the best thing about you. And then R is release your work, find your joy, and build creative legacy. So that's my full creator stack. But like, that's if you're really looking to like make creativity the driving force in your life. If you just want to start with calming the noise and letting yourself start to daydream. Those are two great entry points, and find your own things along the way. Like, I'm one person, I have one take on creativity based on my unique set of life experiences. But I really think calming the noise and remembering what you loved as a child and then just starting to daydream is a great entryway.
I love this list, Lauren. This is so helpful. And so tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are today? How come that you were so excited or interested in creativity? How did you end up in the podcasting world? How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, so you may have heard something I said earlier, which is that I believe we all have a creative inciting incident, which is where our creative spark, our creative purpose is kind of injected into our heart and we light up and open up. So mine happened when I was 3. My mom took me to see a musical, and as we stood up clapping, I was like, this was witchcraft. This was sorcery. It was like the most magical thing I had ever seen in my life. And I turned to my mom and said, Mommy, I want to be up there doing that. And so she got me enrolled in the local children's theater. And from then on, my life really has been wrapped around creativity, storytelling, connecting with people through using my voice and empowering other people to use their voice. So that was planted in me as a pretty young child. I went to school at Michigan State. I got a BFA in theater, a BA in communication. I moved to Los Angeles to complete those 2 degrees. So I did an internship on the Ellen Show. And as I was out here, I was like, well, it's pretty hard to get to LA. I might as well stay here and pursue acting. So I started pursuing acting. Acting started breaking my heart. One thing I really learned from that experience was I was so disappointed in the way that my acting career was going. But unfortunately, when I look back on it, I thought I failed, but I didn't fail. I had just rebranded disappointment as failure. But because that felt so bad and because my identity was tied to it, it was really like a codependent relationship that I had with acting. So I did need to move on. And thankfully, from that pain was birthed another facet of my creativity that I didn't even know I had, which was writing music. And so I started writing music because acting broke my heart, music healed it. And I found from that, sometimes the dreams you find on the way to your dreams are even more powerful than your original intention. So I just started falling in love with music. But at the same time, because I was living in Los Angeles, I was from Detroit in Michigan originally, I was really, really homesick and lonely. And so as I was driving to all these music gigs, I would turn on Sirius XM radio. And this was like a big satellite radio station in the States, lots of talk shows. And I started listening to this show that was hosted by a guy who was from my hometown originally. And so I would drive down the streets of Los Angeles pretending like I was back in Michigan. And it was through that experience I really realized audio's healing power to make somebody feel less alone. And I just started saying, I'm going to work at SiriusXM someday. I'm going to work at SiriusXM someday. I had no connections. I had limited experience. I had done radio in college, but nothing in the professional world. And I ended up getting a job hosting at a place called AfterBuzz TV. We did video and audio podcasts for after shows. And through that job, I learned also how to produce. And then I told the founder of the company, I want to work at SiriusXM. My dream is to work in radio. He yelled out from across the room, I might have an opportunity for you. Like a month later, he reached out to me and was like, the VP of talent for women's programming is here. Like, I want you to come meet her. So I went and met her, and she was literally the person who had created all my favorite radio shows. Like the one that I was telling you about, this other one, like that was called Wake Up with Taylor, who's like one of my greatest inspirations in the field. And anyway, I went home, I wrote up a pitch of like 100 different ideas for a show that she was producing. And they ended up creating a position for me there at SiriusXM to associate produce and be on air with Maria Menounos for her SiriusXM show. So I did that. Within about 6 months, I moved up to producer, did that for 2.5 years. And then at the end of that experience, that boss who created the position for me asked me if I was interested in a new opportunity and invited me to come over to a podcasting company. And that's where I've produced most of the shows that I'm known for. At this point in my career, I've produced over 30 shows, and including my own, which I produce as an indie podcaster, Unleash Your Inner Creative. And I've won 3 Webby Awards. It's been like the greatest joy of my life. And really, my podcast, Unleash Your Inner Creative, is like the nucleus of everything. So I just think because creativity has been both my greatest joy and when I've like pushed it out, my greatest pain, I find that to be the purpose of my life. And everything else kind of like revolves around expressing my voice and helping other people express their voices.
Lauren, what an amazing journey. I can't believe it. So now that you have told us how much you know about podcasting, you have to give us some tips. There is a lot of people picking up podcasting because they have things to say, right? They want to create some content in whatever field they're in, and they feel that they have a voice, they have something to say, and they want to put content out into the world. How do we produce something that's valuable and that really should have a space in this world?
Yeah. So first I want to say, like, don't let anybody scare you off from this field because there's quote unquote so many podcasts.
Mm.
I believe a podcast is not only a great tool for your personal branding and to grow in the media world, but it's also an excellent self-development tool and network building tool. So don't shut yourself out just because you think there's too many or because you're like, I don't know how I'll grow it. There's lots of ways to make your podcast valuable. Number one. Number two, I think people focus way too much on, do I have the right microphone? Do I have the right look? Do I have the right video? And not enough on content. People are always making posts about like, the future of podcasting is blah, blah, blah. First of all, don't trust anybody who says that because this is a really young industry. And the truth is no one knows and no one has ever known. So there's that. But the other part of it is content is queen. Okay. Like you can have the best microphone in the world, the best video in the world, the greatest network. But if you don't know what your show is about, if you can't say what your show is about and what it gives the listener in 1 or 2 sentences, you shouldn't launch your show yet because that show promise is at the heart of everything you do. You have to have that show promise at your forefront before you book a guest, before you make your content calendar, before you release your trailer. Without knowing what your show gives the listener, there is really no point in launching. And I think a lot of people are eager to get their show out on the road. And I get that. Like sometimes you do have to just go for it and learn along the way. But if you want to build something powerful from the very top, at least knowing what you're attempting to do each episode is really important. And you'd be shocked by how many people launch without knowing that.
Mm.
When you're trying to find that topic, again, what I go back to, I call it the show thesis statement, is look at what in your life has brought you the most joy and what in your life has brought you the most pain or suffering. The topic you're meant to talk on is usually at the middle. And that doesn't mean it's like an intense topic. It could be like, I had a really crappy childhood, and what brought me the most joy was laughing. So I do a comedy podcast where I talk about my difficult experiences and help people move through them through humor. So it doesn't have to be like this serious thing, but it really should be something that incentivizes you, that makes you joyful. Because if you don't have this feeling of like, this is my life's purpose, this is my life's calling, podcasting is exhausting. Like when we talk about it, it's like pushing the boulder up the hill and then it rolls down every single week and you just have to push it up again. So that boulder better be something that you really enjoy.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it sounds so easy. It's the hardest thing to get traction, even when you know what you're doing or why you're showing up and what you're trying to put out into the world.
Oh, yeah.
Lauren, so what does success look like for you? What does it mean to you?
Happiness and a feeling of being at home in myself. Up until I was 33, always was looking for my value out in the world, from people telling me I was good enough, from my accolades, from what I could do or what I could accomplish. And when I turned 33, they call that the Jesus year in the spiritual world, because that's the year Jesus died, but like also came into his power. And so I was all excited. I don't know why, because like he died that year, like obviously something weird is going to happen. But I was like, this is my Jesus year. I'm so excited. Everything's going to go right for me. And it ended up being a total year of ego death and dark night of the soul that helped me rise. And so it was very on brand, I think, for that. And I would recommend anybody who's 33 or older, look back on what was going on in that year of your life. Almost all my friends had some sort of similar experience where like this idea of what they thought was going to get them happiness, love, a sense of peace was shattered, and they had to totally recalculate what was going to make them happy and feel good within themselves. So anyway, that year I finally realized like, oh, I could get everything I want and still not be happy, because it really starts from inside. And for me, with my relationship with God, or I could not get everything I want and still not be happy. So I might as well choose to be happy within myself and still to have goals, like still to have dreams, still to have aspirations, but knowing whether or not I ever reach them does not define me. Again, we are all walking miracles, and I encourage everybody to have dreams. I love dreams. When I was in high school, my speech that I gave for my whole class was do what you love what you do. I believe in it with every fiber of my being. The place where I think dreams become tricky is where you think if you get this dream, you are finally going to be okay. Because the only way we can ever be okay is if we cultivate that within ourselves. So the world is never going to give you the worth that you're looking for. It starts inside. It starts with healing. So success to me looks like continuing my healing journey, continuing to realize who I am is the best thing about me, who you are is the best thing about you, for you listening. Like, it's not what you do. And continuing to be the one that opens doors for myself. The world is going to do whatever it wants. It's going to slam the door. It's going to tell me no. But again, my only job is to not be the one that says no to myself. So to keep trying for my dreams. That's what it looks to me right now.
Yes, and Lauren, so what makes you feel powerful, aligned, really able to show up as yourself?
Having conversations like this, where we're talking about my soul's work and really what I believe, and helping other people remember that they matter and to lift each other up, and like I love what I'm doing right now is speaking. I just did a gig, like I said, in Vegas, talking to this great group of insurance people in insurance. And it was so cool because every single woman I talked to, it was a group of women in insurance. There was one lady who was a young adult novelist. There was one lady who was a self-development writer. I actually met a guy there who was a musician. So it's like all these people work in insurance and they have this rich artistic and creative life in addition to the way they use creativity in their jobs. And so I just love pointing out to people like you're creative, even if you've been told your whole life you're not and you thought you weren't. And like it's time to unleash because I really think if we had a world of fully unleashed, empowered individuals who loved, trusted, and knew themselves, and also believed in the goodness of other people, our world today would look really different. So, having conversations like this, getting to speak about it, connect with my listeners on my podcast, that makes me feel powerful. Also, I just got married, and my husband is just like my bestie. Whenever people would say that in the past, I'd be like, okay, loser, get a life. Like, he's your best friend. I'm sorry to everybody I may have judged in the past because I am now you. Like, I just love spending time with him and bouncing ideas off of him. And yeah, spending time with my parents. They're my everything too. So I think it's really having really deep, heartfelt conversations with people who get it and
Mm.
spending time with my loved ones.
Lauren, congratulations. How exciting is that?
Thank you.
It's a real new chapter. And you were talking about this moment of the phoenix rising from the ashes, right? Round about your 33rd birthday, but that can happen at any time. And I also feel that this is something that's happening a lot and part of our zeitgeist. And I think that this breaking the mold, which is related to that, is something that we are asked to do, right? All of the systems that were built, you're breaking out of them, you're redefining them for yourself, and you lead with that very powerfully. Lauren, what do you feel are sort of deal breakers for you? What are the hard no's?
Uh, Anybody who treats people badly, like if you engage in name calling, if you think you're better than other people and you put yourself like you believe in a power differential, um I don't like being around people who do not act with integrity and with
Mm.
kindness, and I don't tolerate that anymore. I didn't have as much power when I was younger in my career, but like if I ever see somebody else, I've struggled to stand up for myself, but if I ever see somebody else being mistreated, I will literally put myself in the line of fire to protect that person. Um, so and now I'm finally, because I've done a lot of work on myself, doing that for myself too. So that for sure. I think false urgency is a huge red flag.
Mm.
I learned that from an experience I had earlier this year, but I heard Glennon Doyle say that too on a podcast I was producing of hers. She's like, anybody who comes to me with a false sense of urgency, it's an immediate no. And I now feel that because there's something that they're not sharing if they're pressuring you to make a choice.
Yeah.
I also recently heard emergencies usually involve ambulances.
Mm.
So if you are getting told, like, um, in my world, like, this is an ad read emergency, it's like, okay, yes, there may be like a lot of money on the line, but nobody needs to risk their health and well-being for this. You know, like people, again, people are everything. People are more important than work, and that's how I feel. So I lead with a people first approach. And I guess the thesis statement of this as I'm talking about it is if somebody doesn't think people are more important than whatever the issue is, then that's a deal breaker for me.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. Lauren, is there anything or anyone that you would thank for where you are today?
I mean, a million people, but the person besides my parents, because they have been believers from day one and like loved everything. I mean, my dad worked full time. He never missed a single play, musical, choir concert. When I did soccer, he like became a coach. I mean, and my mom was at everything. So definitely them, because I think having unconditional love is the biggest head start you can get in life. And so my parents, number one. But But the other person I really have to put on this list, and it often brings me to tears when I talk about him, is my third grade teacher, Mr. Rand Swansea.
Oh.
I had a really, really hard second grade experience where my teacher made me feel like I was stupid, humiliated me in front of the class. I would get, it was when my stomach issues started. Even I would get sick before I would go into school, and I just really lost my confidence that year. And my teacher in third grade brought me back to life. He reminded me of my own brilliance and pulled it out of me. And I really don't know where I would be today if I hadn't had him as a believing mirror and confidence builder and mentor and teacher. And actually, he just came to my wedding.
Oh my God. This is
And we're
too
still in
good.
touch. So and the more therapy I do and the more healing I do, I realize how profound the impact of having him that year was on my life. It changed everything. So teachers out there, like, thank you for what you do. You have no idea. It can be really scary because I had that second grade teacher, so it can be a wounding experience. But when it's a vocation for people, and when these teachers like believe in their students, it is so unbelievably life-changing. So I credit him with a lot of my success, because I would absolutely not be where I am today if he hadn't believed in me, and seen me as such a young child. It changed everything. After that, I started excelling in school. So it was really all about his belief and pulling that out of me.
I love that, Lauren. And I often think about that. And I think teachers who literally give their whole lives to educating the future, they often don't know these pivotal moments where they show up for their kids or one of their kids and they just believe in them. What a life-changing thing that is.
Yeah,
Lauren, so
it's
what
really
are your
amazing.
plans and goals? What is in store for you?
Yeah. So continuing to build my speaking career is huge. I am speaking at Michigan State, my alma mater, next week, actually speaking with the entrepreneur, not next week, next month, speaking with the entrepreneurship department. I've got a few really exciting gigs on the books for 2026, but definitely booking more speeches because I want to share this message of creativity and remind people that they were born creative and teach them how to pull it out of themselves again. Because again, it's not something you have to invent, it's just something you have to remember. So if anybody wants a speaker, I'm your gal. And then the other thing I'm doing, I'm producing Emma Greed's podcast. She created, I'm an EP on it.
Aspire.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yes.
So I just stepped into that role last week and it has been amazing. It's really fun because I started my podcasting career at Girl Boss Radio and now I'm working on her show. And so it's kind of a fun bookends moment. Doing a lot of creative coaching and consulting. I so love that. Continuing to build up my own company, Lauren LoGrasso Productions, which is what houses all of this. And in 2026, I'm going to be putting out music again, which is so exciting. Lots of songs about the topics we've spoken about today: healing, self-development, self-love. And yeah, just continuing to unleash my inner creative and helping other people to do that too.
Lauren, and what takeaways do you want our listeners to have from your story?
The first thing that comes to my mind, I don't even like saying never give up because then I feel like you're reading the words give up over and over again. So I'll just say always keep going. My
Mm.
story is one of persistence. It may not seem like that, but believe me, like there are many nights on the floor crying, pounding my fist, asking God if God even loved me. Okay. So it hasn't all been like sunshine and roses, and it's still not. Like I'm a deeply sensitive person, and it's hard to put yourself out there and pursue your dreams. But if you can just remember that, like, whether or not you get them has no bearing on who you are and your value as a human being, I think it's actually a lot easier to pursue them. Because when you're putting your whole worth into whether or not this thing comes to fruition, first of all, it sucks the joy right out of whatever that thing is you're doing. But second of all, it's too intense. And even if you get it, I can speak from experience. I got a feature in People magazine as a musician. I was so happy that day. I was like, even if nothing ever happens to me again, at least I have this. And then 2 days later, I was miserable because it didn't change the way I felt inside. So I would say continue to pursue your dreams. Never say no to yourself. Put yourself out there knowing that no matter what happens, you have inherent value. And of course, the other part is you were born creative. Creativity is your birthright. So get out there, start unleashing it today, and don't let anybody convince you otherwise.
Lauren, thank you so much. What a great finish to your story, to all the insights you're leading with here. I love your story. I'm so excited to have you on WECAN.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a great creative day.